Hey there, folks. I've integrated a tool called FreeFileSync into most of the backup and disaster recovery routines I run on my local network. Today, I'm going to show you the basic configuration of a job task and some of the settings that go along with it. The context for the examples I'll show are related to the backup operations I perform to ensure that my Elder Scrolls Skyrim mod installation directory is appropriately version controlled, which allows me to test all kinds of mods while maintaining a pristine backup directory so that I can easily recover in the event of a bad mod install or configuration. The two prerequisites for today's demo are to have FreeFileSync installed and to have Windows Clipboard History enabled in your Windows settings, though the latter is purely a nicety and convenience item that I like to use, as opposed to a hard requirement to following this tutorial. I'll start by double-clicking this PC on the desktop, and then clicking into the D drive. The two important folders here are the Skyrim Eldergleam folder and the Skyrim Eldergleam Backup folder. Both of these folders are obviously on the same 1TB SSD. I'll right-click and open the backup folder in a new Explorer window, and then double-click into the Skyrim Eldergleam folder in the other Explorer window. The end-to-end backup strategy I employ is as follows. The Skyrim Eldergleam folder is where I install mods, launch the game, and test and configure those mods. When I fully test a mod and consider the install hardened, I run a FreeFileSync job that copies the contents of the Skyrim Eldergleam folder to the Skyrim Eldergleam Backup folder. This is a diff job, so only the files that have been modified since the last backup will be copied to the Eldergleam Backup folder. I'll manually run this backup job only after extensive testing, so that I have confidence that what I back up is a fully functional Skyrim install. While testing a new mod, if I get down a rabbit hole and totally bork my working files, I'll run a separate FreeFileSync job to restore the known good files from the Skyrim Eldergleam Backup folder to the Skyrim Eldergleam folder, overwriting everything in the directory and thus restoring me to a known working state. It's kind of the nuclear option, but I use it more often than I'd like to admit. But hey, modding is dirty work. Every morning at 2:30, a separate FreeFileSync job copies the contents of the hardened Eldergleam Backup folder to one of my servers. This is another diff job, so only modified files are copied. The scheduling of this job is managed via Windows Task Scheduler. The local files, which are on an SSD, are copied to the server onto another SSD. While way out of scope for this video, the other tasks in the Skyrim backup process are as follows. Also on the server, every 72 hours at 4 AM, a program I wrote copies the full contents of the latest hardened backup folder on the server to another non-SSD hard drive on the same server. This copy operation only occurs if something has changed since the last backup. 5 iterations of this backup are kept, and anytime a new backup is taken, the oldest backup is deleted. The power delivery strategy on the server has the slower rotational storage device, powered by a separate power supply and backup battery, than that of the SSD drive. This is done to try and further reduce the likelihood of catastrophic data loss if the event were to be triggered as a result of a power delivery problem. Knock on wood, but this strategy has seen me through years of modding without a catastrophic loss of data. Today, I'll walk you through the steps of creating the scripts I use to back up the primary Skyrim Eldergleam folder to the Skyrim Eldergleam Backup folder, and the restore script which copies from the Skyrim Eldergleam Backup folder to the Skyrim Eldergleam folder. I'll open FreeFileSync and click the New button to configure a new backup job. The syncing interface, in context to the simple scripts we're about to write, is laid out in 3 panes. The left pane contains the source files we want to back up. The thin middle pane will show the specific file operations that will occur during a backup job, and the right pane contains the destination folder changes that occur as a result of the backup. These 3 buttons lead to different tabs in the same synchronization settings window. The Compare button will start a comparison operation immediately between the folder paths here and here. This is just a comparison operation. No backup tasks will be performed. This is useful when you just want to get a sense of what is different about your chosen folders. The Synchronize button here performs a comparison and an actual backup, so be sure of your setup before clicking this particular button in the UI. I'll create the primary backup job first. In the leftmost pane, I'll click the Browse button, click this PC in the Quick Access pane, double-click the D drive, double-click into the Skyrim Eldergleam folder, and then click the Select Folder button. Now I'll click the Browse button in the rightmost pane, click this PC, double-click the D drive, and this time double-click into the Skyrim Eldergleam Backup folder, and then click the Select Folder button. Next, I'll click the blue sprocket to ensure the backup settings are correctly set. Since this video is not meant to be a deep dive into FreeFileSync settings, I'm simply going to touch on the settings important to this particular backup configuration. In the Comparison tab, I'll make sure the variant is set to File Time and Size, and the Ignore Error and Automatic Retry checkboxes are unchecked. With those settings confirmed, I'll click over to the Filter tab. FreeFileSync's method of handling backups is that files or folders must pass all filter rules to be synchronized, so the default configuration is sufficient for my use case. The processing order here is to include everything in the source folder, indicated by the star in the Include Text field, and specifically exclude the directories and files in the Exclude Text field. To simplify the backup vernacular in this example, what this configuration really says is backup everything in the source folder except these items. Since this is sufficient, I'll move on to the Synchronization tab. For Sync Variant, I'll click Mirror, which ensures that the right folder is made to match the left folder. I'll also click Use a Database File to detect changes, and finally make sure the Delete and Override option is set to Recycle Bin. With those options set, I'll click the OK button to close the synchronization settings window. Now when I click the Compare button, FreeFileSync will compare the Skyrim Eldergleam folder and the Skyrim Eldergleam backup folder and list the various file operations necessary to make the backup folder mirror the source folder. In this example, currently the folders are identical, so the UI tells us there are no files to synchronize. After our backup job is configured, I'll click the last button in this row, which is the Save as Batch Job button, leave the settings as is, click the Save As button, navigate to the desktop folder, name the job Backup Eldergleam, and click the Save button. To demonstrate the UI and backup process, I'll minimize FreeFileSync and in the Eldergleam Backup Explorer window delete everything. I'll quickly flip back over to the FreeFileSync UI and now click the Compare button. Once the comparison finishes, you can hover over the entries in the middle filter pane to get a sense of what the operation is that would take place. Ready to run the backup, I'll minimize the UI once more, and now double-click the Backup Eldergleam shortcut on the desktop. FreeFileSync will now compare the source and destination folders and start the backup. This is the first backup run, and since the sync database files have not been created, we'll see an initial warning icon. This particular warning will only be shown on the first backup operation, and will not be shown during future backups. The status window will remain open and we can monitor the backup progress. Sometime later, when the backup is complete, we can click the Log tab to see a full list of every file operation that was executed to perform the backup, as well as the reason why the warning was shown. The buttons on the left side of the window act as a sort of multi-select, so if I want to see the informational items as well, I can click the gray eye icon to see those. If I close the status window and now double-click and run the backup job again, we can see that A, there were no changes to be made, and B, there is no warning indicator. That completes the creation of the first FreeFileSync job that backs up the primary Skyrim Eldergleam folder into the Skyrim Eldergleam backup folder. Let's now configure the Restore job. This one should be quicker since it's just a variation on the backup job. I'll take a different route configuring this job than I did before, but this is just my personal preference for how to go about it. I'll right-click on the backup batch job file on the desktop and click Copy. Now, also on the desktop, I'll right-click and click Paste. Now I'll right-click on the copied file, click Rename, and rename it to Restore Eldergleam. Next, I'll restore the FreeFileSync GUI, click the Open button, select the Restore Eldergleam file, and then click Open. Since the Restore job is just the backup job in reverse, I'll click into and copy both directory paths at the top of the left and right panes using Ctrl-C on the keyboard. Because I have clipboard history activated in my window settings, I can place both of these paths on the clipboard at the same time. Now, I'll click back into the left column's folder path, click the Windows key plus V on the keyboard, and in the multi-clipboard pop-up, click the Skyrim Eldergleam backup folder path. In the right pane, I'll select the folder path, click the Windows key plus V again, and now click the Skyrim Eldergleam folder path. And that's it. I'll click the Save button in the upper left corner to save these settings to the Restore job, and go ahead and close the FreeFileSync application window. This job, as you'll remember, is for restoring my known good modding files in the event I need to get back to a pristine state. Generally speaking, I back up pretty rarely, but restore somewhat frequently due to the nature of installing, testing, and validating gob tons of mods. Let's quickly look at an example of how the Restore job functions. I'll click into the Skyrim Eldergleam Explorer window, Select a bunch of random files and folders, right-click with the mouse, and then click Delete. For a different example, I'll also open modorganizer.ini and enter a new line with some gobbledygook, save the file, and close it. Think of that action as one where a mod config file is edited that causes a negative outcome, but perhaps I don't know when or in what file I made that edit. Now, if I run the Restore Eldergleam sync job, all of the files and folders are restored from the Skyrim Eldergleam backup folder to their working state in the Skyrim Eldergleam folder. We could also click over into the log file to see what was changed. I'll click the Close button on the sync window, double-click and open the modorganizer.ini file, and we can see that the erroneous line no longer exists. I prefer to keep these two shortcuts on the desktop, but separate them from other items of interest to avoid accidentally clicking on one when I didn't mean to. That's going to do it for this video. I hope this short tutorial provides some insight into how I think about and approach maintaining a proper modding environment for Skyrim. I'm a big fan of FreeFileSync. It's a very powerful tool once you get the hang of it. The example today was an extraordinarily simple method to utilize its most basic capabilities. I hope you've enjoyed this demonstration. Thanks for watching, and out.